where we are trying to encourage as many local contractors to be part of that whole movement into the digital era.
Welcome back to another episode of Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas. On this week's episode, I'm in conversation with Hamlyn Holder, who is an adjunct lecturer with the University of the West Indies and a site reliability engineer with Methanex, which is one of the big natural gas industries in Trinidad, along with many other industries in Trinidad and Tobago. We all might know it as a vacation spot, but in the world of oil and gas, it's actually a pretty big global player. And so today we're going to talk about the challenges of the oil and gas community in the West Indies faces, similar to those around the world, related to workforce upskilling and preparation for the future of oil and gas coming at us all very quickly. So with that, let me welcome Hamlyn to the podcast. Hamlyn, welcome to Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Glad to be here.
Let's crack open this though first with a bit about your background, and how you ended up in this industry and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, thanks. So glad to be here. So my journey initially started in telecommunications for local telecommunications company, TSTT, at that time, and then I jumped across and getting into the technology. I really wanted to pursue something either in electrical or mechanical. So that's why I started a diploma and went all the way up to doing a diploma in electrical. And then I said, let me do a degree, and I chose mechanical instead. So I kind of have a mix of backgrounds. And then while on my journey, this is all about 15 to 20 years ago, somebody would have asked me, hey, you might make a good teacher. So when I was pursuing my engineering, I was also kind of teaching part-time, more on a voluntary basis. And then after I graduated, I started to work for our local oil and gas companies, which was National Petroleum. Then I moved on to another oil and gas company, which would have been Neil and Massey Wood Group. And they had one of the major contracts for offshore platforms. So started to work offshore for quite a bit, and still teaching on odd occasion, and expanding my education and teaching portfolio. And then eventually left offshore and came downstream into the methanol production. And while working with the university and pursuing my master's, the university said, hey, you look like good stock to present the information. And I've been teaching in the University of the West Indies for, it's almost 10 years now, I think, in condition monitoring and reliability engineering, etc. So it's been a journey.
Yeah.
And just being here in the Caribbean and seeing the different perspectives.
It's a little bit about Methanex and methanol might be helpful. Mm-hmm. People might not be familiar with this, but
sure.
Methanex, big company, global company.
Yeah, one of the largest, probably the largest producers of methanol in the world.
Yeah.
They have sites
Gigantic.
in over 6 areas. And basically, they would take the natural gas and, through chemical processing, make what we call methanol.
Yep.
It's not methane. They would take the methane and turn it into methanol. But methanol is one of those unique chemical that has a wide range of functionalities and uses. So it's used for plastics, paints. It's in almost all of your household products. So there's a real essential demand globally for it. And methanol has been produced by Methanex over the decades. We have 2 plants here that produce methanol, and that's shipped all over the world.
I didn't know there were 2 plants. That's a big story, because there's a lot of natural gas in the country, and
Yes.
liquefied natural gas too exported, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And is there an offshore oil industry to accompany the gas focus, or is it mostly gas?
Right. So yeah, that's a little bit of history. So the viewers could understand,
Yeah.
what's going on in the Caribbean and for the different stakeholders. So um, we have throughout the Caribbean a few countries that have are involved in oil and gas, particularly.
Mm.
One of the first nascent providers would have been Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I
Yeah.
am at.
Yep.
That was probably in the 1900s since the discovery.
Mhm.
And just looking at the timeline, as they have been off and on searches for oil in different locations.
Yeah.
Soon after, I think Venezuela started to get some discoveries. After that, coming down to the 1960s, there about 70s,
Mm.
a shift was taken to look at downstream. So we did do a lot of offshore drilling,
Yep.
and now we wanted to do some downstream and processing. We had the refinery called Petrotrin, and we would have refined petroleum products and so on.
Mhm.
And it's only until recently, I would say like, 2015, there was another discovery, a big discovery, I should say, from Guyana. There's also a lot of work being done in Suriname as well. But these are more, upstreams. They probably have FPSOs, just, getting uh, getting the natural gas, well, the oil
Oil. Yeah.
out of the ocean and stuff like that. But no, Trinidad has really progressed, I would say, into having both upstream and downstream.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically a synopsis. I mean, you have other places. Jamaica is still exploring, and they're looking for to actually sink a drill and take a look at it.
Mm.
I think Barbados has had, but it may also just be, for their local economy. But Trinidad is by far
Yeah. Well
has the
known.
longest stake in the game, and
Yeah.
now we have our brothers in Guyana and Suriname also stepping up with some huge findings. So
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, Guyana in particular, this is in the media in North America because of the merger activity in the United States. These discoveries are the topic of negotiations between the
Yeah,
majors in their acquisition programs. So yeah, these are names that people will start to hear, and there's a reason why. But you're
definitely.
you're right in the middle of it, so this is good to talk about this. So let's turn to the question around the workforce challenges.
Hmm.
The workforce in the Caribbean also, you want to participate in a global industry like oil and gas. You have to be safe and reliable and competent players. So you have to maintain a high level of workforce capacity and capability. How do you do this in a it's one thing to you're in Houston and send your workforce to a community college
Yeah,
or a school or what have you, but the Caribbean, different problem here. We're very spread out, small
yeah.
economies, relatively few people, high costs potentially.
Hmm.
How do you educate the workforce? What are the challenges there?
Yeah, it's not something that is done overnight. It's something that took a transition over the years, I would say, to get us to where Trinidad and Tobago is, because we would have had to transition from other sectors in the economy, like agriculture.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Remember, yeah, before oil and gas was probably sugarcane and sugar and different citrus and so on.
Yeah.
So, we had to now, reskill into this new engineering, which is, a high learning curve in some areas.
Hmm.
But over the years, with generationally, the younger generation would have been sent into the schools and, to come out as engineers, not farmers and so on.
Mm.
So there are some pros and cons to that, of course. But we'll talk about, hey, the next generation of engineers. I think what is some of the challenges, and just looking back, is getting that knowledge transition carried forth from long-standing producers from the US, the UK, and so on,
Mm.
and carrying that knowledge. And then there's some other challenges around intellectual property,
Oh, of
of
course, yeah.
of being
Yeah.
able to find certain methods of drilling,
Yeah.
refining, and so on. Um, but by and large, I think where we are now, what helps is we're in this information age, which is putting almost everything out there, compared to, when I was probably now starting to understand engineering. The knowledge is so much more present and, and available.
Hmm.
So there are some differences, some unique differences, which I'm sure we're going to jump into
Yeah,
to the present day.
this I think is really important. The idea that there's a kind of sovereignty over knowledge, and it can be used as um, uh, a tool for industrial advancement in a very localized and protected area is kind of false.
Yeah.
These engineering disciplines are global. Maybe the sanctions on the high tech industry in over Taiwan, over the chip manufacturing in China might you might argue that that industrial knowledge is something you can protect. But for oil and gas, that's just not the case. It's a truly
Yeah.
global industry, and so the
Yeah.
knowledge base is not something you can kind of harbor for yourself.
Okay. And in addition to that also, it's we are driven by standards and codes.
Yeah, of
So
course,
it's
and they're
making
global.
changes and stuff. Yeah, they have to be global. So this whole region of innovation is going to be at odds with standardization,
Yeah.
which says, hey, we have learned from the past, and most times we learn from incidents, and this is the new standard. We have to do it play by play. Don't deviate.
Yeah.
So you have to learn and adopt. But then as the plants or the assets ages, there's a new desire for innovation, new materials required, and stuff like that. So that's some of the conflicts that we see coming day to day
Yeah.
with the whole industry right now.
Yeah. So how actually is this knowledge transfer carried out in training and upskilling? I mean, in North America, a great deal of what people learn about the industry takes place at training courses and conferences put together by vendors, say. Uh, is there a parallel here in the Caribbean, or is it done in some other fashion?
It's both. It's kind of a hybrid. It's always that uh, how to put it, that clash of experience versus academics. I would say by and large, the majority of workforce actually gets skilled through, training agencies via the government and so on. But then you have the higher order of engineering
Mm.
and calculations and design and stuff like that, where you have to, really go through university type degree and so on to be classified. One of the things, just talking on the university side, is that,
Mm.
well, the university tries to provide as wide a scope, but there's so many unique esoteric areas that maybe in particular fields within oil and gas
Yeah.
that may not be provided.
Yeah.
So at the University of the West Indies, for sure, we try to cover, the basic ones, the asset management, planning, scheduling, maintenance, quality, total quality management, and the core stuff to run a business and the business sectors. But also, it's an opportunity for others to just carry on and specialize in those areas. But you won't find an aeronautical engineering degree, right,
Yeah.
at the university as yet, or specialized areas in maybe nanoscience and so on.
Yeah.
But you would brush upon it, and that's the goal for the University of the West Indies, I guess.
And what about the newer digital domains? And here I'm thinking about application development, app development on mobile devices, cloud computing, robotics and drone technology. These are also widely available as intellectual property. So they're not proprietary.
Correct.
How is the Caribbean educational economy? How is it addressing these areas? I mean, they're not exactly aeronautics, like super narrow and niche, but still they're fast evolving and quite specialized.
Yes, and I we are. trying to keep a pace, to be honest, from
Mm,
my personal perspective, and trying to get it into the curriculum, and
yeah.
even give an opportunity for the very young generation, coming into what we call primary schools or kindergarten and stuff, to be able to understand what is this new technology is about.
Mm,
And with all change, there's, this apprehension. There's a need for management of the change and
yep.
awareness, for all the individuals involved in it. Um, the University of the West Indies has been pioneering. I remember when I now started, there was
Now, don't
one
date
of my
yourself here. Yeah.
yeah. I don't want to sell too much out right now, but you know,
Yeah.
one of my co-lecturers, he was doing his PhD, similar to what Elon Musk was doing, and that was
Ah,
some years ago,
yeah.
to actually use the brain to control things through robotics. And so it's there for, like, if you want to go at the very high level, but we want to bring that from PhD down to masters.
Yep.
And I think our goal, if you look at it in the next 5 years or so, would be to ingrain that into everything. So it doesn't matter whether it be engineering, marketing. We need to have AI as part of the
Yeah.
curriculum, and that is going to start, and probably even start at what we call our secondary schools, right, which is right after primary. We at Metanex, we do quite a bit of community work, introducing people to
Oh,
applications. But we there's quite a bit of promise. A lot of the information is really self-taught, I wouldn't say, but also it's self-gained, not self-taught,
yeah.
because the information is out there. You have so many avenues, Udemy and Coursera, and a lot of things available to teach, coding, low coding, Python. You can teach yourself, really and truly. So, but it's always good to have that, experience through certification and the university. So
Yeah.
it's making its way. Those, what I call the top 8 or 10, robotics, mechatronics, that, as you mentioned, data management. How do we deal with, blockchains and processing capabilities of the GPUs as it is right now?
Yeah.
Detection in oil and gas, that's a big focus area, because we need to inspect piping, bridges, things that we can't access. And we need to use the onslaught of all the available technologies, infrared, UV, ultrasonic, to be able to detect, damage mechanisms, failure modes, so that we can prevent it. And of course, lower bottom line, and in terms of saving costs and preventing disastrous incidents.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now we have other things coming up in the pipeline, things like simulation, digital twinning, um, to just basically project and predict quite a bit, and as well material science, and then there's a whole area now that we have to accommodate, which is the whole climate and sustainability.
Of course. Yeah.
So how do we look at that transition, from oil and gas into, what the future holds with generating energy?
Yeah, it's the carbon and energy transition, the new energy economy are not
Yeah,
unique to North America or the OECD economies. Everywhere is dealing with this. And I
correct.
suspect Caribbean economies are close to the equator.
Yeah,
Many of the islands are challenged with the climate change because of the more intense weather systems, rising sea levels. So it's really right in the unfortunately, it's right at the heart of sustainability and survivability for the island economies. So, in case people are listening to this thinking, oh, the people in small economies aren't thinking about this. No, no, they're thinking about it, they're taking it very seriously.
yeah, definitely. Now, Trinidad, the Caribbean culture,
Yeah.
I'll step forward and speak a little bit about it, is a little different from what you might see as an industrial
Oh,
metropolitan
okay.
type. From what I see, it's a balance of leisure and work, and studiousness and steadfastness to
Yeah.
get the job done.
Mhm.
So we always try to find, we always have a kind of blend in our own culture in terms of, the workforce. And sometimes people get frustrated with it.
Yep.
Sometimes people understand it that, hey, why are we pushing so hard to damage the climate, So I think we are going to find our own. Of course, we need to do something urgently and start to get involved as soon as possible and get ahead of the curve is what I call it
Yeah.
with renewables and sustainable technologies, climate resilience, and that is definitely where I think we could add our value and our perspective, our voice
Yeah.
in terms of the technology, and don't let the technology just come at us, but be part of the development of it.
Yeah. Well, it just underscores the changes, right? It's this whole climate challenge, adoption of these new technologies, the rise of digital, the gap between today's workforce and tomorrow's workforce looks pretty significant. How big is that gap? Do you think, or is it? And I know you're working hard to close it. I think
All right.
one of the challenges, the frontier keeps racing on ahead. So how do you catch up? Is probably the challenge.
Yeah, I where there's opportunities and challenges, there will be innovation, right? And I think this is where we are going to see the discretizing and digitalizing coming to the forefront.
Yeah.
And once there's a more economical way for there to have innovation, they're going to have, we have a little siren going off. I don't know if you're hearing.
No.
um,
Nope.
no,
Can't
no,
hear
no.
it.
It's
Keep
just
going.
a drill.
No.
So once they have um, this energizing of education,
Yeah.
what we are seeing is that we may not be able to put a lot of capital to change in an entire plant, but during the upgrades, there's some room for innovation. And I know some of your past podcasts would have spoke about STOs and turnarounds and shutdowns.
Yes.
And those are some of the key areas we, especially the university in terms of turnaround planning, seek to inculcate what should be done during our upgrade.
Yeah.
A big challenge as well is this whole thing about obsolescence, and that's also an opportunity because now you could revise your electrical systems, revise your circuitry, your coding and stuff like that. So
Mm.
we do need to move from rig to renewables as well. So there's a lot of learning in that aspect of how we could use the sunlight, and there are courses we are now
Yeah.
offering in the university as well to get and upskill the local workforce. So there's quite a bit of areas for us to make that transition.
Yeah, and I think Trinidad and Tobago being blessed with warm weather, lots of sunshine, and plenty of methane.
Yeah.
The economies could become hydrogen leaders at some point down the track. Is this a topic of conversation amongst the industrial companies in the country to do this transformation of hydrogen to or natural gas to hydrogen, or is the economy? I mean, you're doing very well, obviously, with methanol manufacturing. So there might be an argument that says, don't worry about hydrogen. Let's just stick with what we know. How's that playing out?
No, I think our government is actively looking at options from moving from probably to doing the transition from blue hydrogen to green hydrogen, where
Yeah.
it's totally green. Um, with all of these things, it's again, I like to look at the conflicts. So the conflicts is, or the conflicts are,
Hmm.
there's a large capital investment needed
Yep.
um, for a low sample point of success, and the thermodynamics and understanding of being able to produce hydrogen at this point in time, the confidence level may not be there to actually make it at the right amount of capital investment to get that return on investment.
Yeah.
Um, so that science is new as well. And again, there's apprehension for it. We are we are looking at of course, making that transition. We do, as you mentioned, make things like methanol, ammonia,
Yeah.
like LNG. We do have quite a bit of value streams, and with we do have a depleting reserve. So we do want to make a nice smooth segue and transition into some of the greener solutions like hydrogen.
Yeah.
Um, our situation is always a little different from my perspective because a lot of our energy is actually done for cooling as opposed to heating,
Ah, that's true.
as for
Yeah.
other nations.
Yeah.
So on the one standpoint, you could look at, hey, can I supply the energy or could I reduce the amount of energy needed to cool?
Mm.
And so they may have other ways to look at, making that climatic innovative
Yeah.
leap. Not just in it, but we are looking at hydrogen. Quite a bit of discussion, but again, is it in the early phases? Is it proven?
Yeah.
And what's the payback period? Those are the sort of discussions that need to be had.
Yeah. Well, and of course, the reality is, as a producer, you need an off-taker, someone who will take the
Correct.
product and is prepared to put money up front in the form of a long contract to say, if you supply it, I'll buy it at this price for this period of time, and that then gives you the capital
Correct.
strength to go and invest in it. But where's the off-takers? until we
Yeah,
see them, there's not
it's
much
you
there.
could no matter how good the engineering is, you still need to watch the market. You still
Yeah.
need to bow down to what the market is about and what where the supply and demand is
Yeah.
and where your competitors are. So in terms of pricing, so there are
Well,
so many forces.
there are indeed, so this but does underscore though that at least from my vantage point, the outlook for the Trinidad and Tobago energy economy is in very good shape. There's high demand for natural gas. That's not going to go
Yeah,
away anytime soon. Plus, the country has other energy resource possibilities, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen being
yeah,
among those. And of course, there's whole materials sciences evolving, which take advantage of molecules that the island has in abundance.
yeah,
So yeah, so
correct.
it's very positive. Let's turn to this question though about digital tools and technologies.
Correct.
At the same time as you need the industrial engineers to build, operate, and run plants, there is this wave of digital innovation that you definitely want to take advantage of. How is this skilling happening? Is this again university driven, highly specialized, or is it like North America where it's we're seeing this now in the grade school system, and so young people are becoming effectively digitally native from birth?
One way or the other, it's here.
Yeah.
The young ones are getting into it, but you need to have them specialized and in a certain focus area. It's not just giving somebody a device or iPad or Kindle.
Yeah.
It's the ability for them to understand how it works
Yeah.
and how to make others and reproduce. The University of the West Indies is looking at different wide scale and we do from computer engineering and stuff like that to bring that, but of course that is very close to the working force. But I think we need more STEM, what we call science, technology, engineering,
And
maths,
mathematics. Yeah.
and those type of programs at the younger ages. And then, of course, very diversified, not just in the male schools, but if the
Yeah.
young girls as
Yep.
well.
Yeah.
Give them the opportunity to learn about the technology that's coming. Um, for me, I'm a core maintenance person, so I like the science of maintenance, and we need that here because we may not put down a large capital asset for not as much as we would have put down in terms of building and projects
Hmm.
since the 80s, 2000s and so on. So now it's about maintaining. So that's where the science of it, to bring down your your outlook, your financial outlook in terms of how much you're spending on maintenance, your failures, your loss of production. That's where, as you mentioned, using the AI and stuff for the workforce needs to be embedded.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to learn, how to use drones, simple things like that to do inspection, the maintainability aspect of it, the ability to conduct maintenance remotely, right, without having persons at risk. And where does the supplemental workforce now transition to support that? Not just the core engineering, but the supply chains, the
Yeah.
HSE. What are the health and safety aspects of it? What are some of the quality management, the standards around digital innovation? There's a whole body of knowledge that needs to be had. So
Yeah.
the University of the West Indies is bringing that into it. I know every year you will never see the same coursework from the year before. From about 5 years, I would have started with big data,
Yeah.
machine learning, and now I'm bringing in even more into asset management, things like AI and detection methods, right? Because the science is getting so much more advanced than it would have been when you were reading these black and white pages in the 1980s. So
Yeah.
it's go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a dramatically different time now, and I think your point about the the observation's kind of obvious when you look at it. But the obvious story here is a huge installed industrial base that's going to run for years. It has to be maintained, and at the same time, it has to be able to embrace and work with these newer tools. And the idea that there will be another huge wave of capital expenditure on brand new plants, you can't wait for that. You can't pin your hopes on that. You got to work
No,
with what you've got. Yeah.
correct.
And
Yeah,
so in all of that, you have lots. I'm assuming there's opportunities for people in the Caribbean if they want to work at the nexus of clean tech, new digital innovation, the energy economy, energy manufacturing, both upstream and midstream. It sounds like there's should be lots of work opportunity there.
yeah. Well, we have to create it. And this is where we might leverage more on the entrepreneurial minds, to
Yeah.
fill that gap. And if they need to partner with foreign entities and so on, so be it. But learn the technology, get familiar, because while we have these brownfield aging assets to maintain,
Yeah.
we're still looking at, probably in the 15 years of, depleted reserves. And this is globally. We don't expect by 2050 onwards a whole lot of oil and gas. So there will be a transition. And of course, we're trying to make it as smooth and, as well thought out as we can.
Yeah.
But that's where we come into now, climatic solutions and going green. So carbon capturing, as you mentioned, how do we manage that carbon cycle? Is it just,
Yeah.
are we going to just bury it? Are we just going to, do direct capture? Or maybe we could use it for something, making structures, concrete, who knows? So this is where I think we need to really sit back, and our workforce, well, if not driven by the government, but entrepreneurs can look at it. The private sector could say, "Hey, I could support the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
Let me come and do some drone inspection. Let me come and show you some automation that could lower your workforce." And this is where we are trying to encourage as many local contractors to be part of that whole movement into the digital era.
Well, it sounds really attractive. This split between the leisure economy, the industrial economy, sunshine, beaches, hard
Yeah,
work,
yeah, and a little bit of farming. Don't
and a
forget
little bit of
every now and
farming. Exactly. Well, it would be so much fun. Let me just close off today, though, with if you
Sure.
any observations or thoughts around the outlook for the oil and gas industry. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll always push collaboration, amongst gather the learnings. Trinidad has a long history. We have some new bright up and comers in it. As the Caribbean is very small, right, compared to some of the continents and so on. So we
Yeah.
need to band together and share our knowledge as best possible. And the longer the vision, the smarter the action, So once you see further out, you could put better things in place now.
Yeah.
And and when you look at the life of a asset, of a methanol plant, ammonia plant, there are only a couple 4-year turnarounds, 5-year turnarounds until you may not have a feedstock supply.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to utilize those opportunities
When you
and
can.
when you can.
Yeah.
And that requires thought and collaboration and planning best practice that we need to do things our own way. Trinidad and Guyana needs to come together, where Suriname needs to share our learnings,
Yeah.
so that we could all benefit and see how the economy could be a little more intertwined rather than interdependent.
Yeah. It's a lovely vision, and would be fantastic to see it come to fruition. Hamlin, thanks you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you. No problem. A pleasure being here, Jeffrey.
This has been another episode of Digital Innovations in Oil and Gas. On today's episode, a conversation with Hamlin Holder, all the way from Trinidad and Tobago, on the topic of the energy economy in the Caribbean, the skills and jobs, digitalization, decarbonization. Tune in again next week for another episode. Bye for now.